Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. I did not have a heart attack tonight, which is great news to start off the show, as we are recording this after the New York Knicks nearly blew a 21-point lead to the Minnesota Timberwolves to keep me sane and grounded and all of the things that you need to be when you root for the New York Knickerbockers. I have, of course, my co-host with me, Jeremy Cohen. Jeremy, how you feeling, buddy?
I tried to fake choke and it didn't pay off. It was terrible. It was just, it was both that performance and the fourth quarter, just abysmal all around, I have no fingernails left. I just hated every moment of that quarter. The game itself, just as a whole, was really rough. And it kind of it makes sense, though, that it would occur this week, because this was maybe the weirdest and worst week of Knicks basketball that we've maybe seen this season. Just, the Orlando loss was just,
that was
trash.
Bad. Yeah,
the Spurs game didn't even happen. And
it disappeared.
And there was a game earlier that, yes, it was I blanking even on the opponent, where it was a nice win, but because the Knicks have won 4 out of 5 of their last games, but it just, this is a week where you're glad you're turning the page and you're facing other competition, because this is just not fun.
At any point, did you think they were going to lose the game?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I almost always think, how are they going to blow it? And I don't mean to be cynical when I say that. It's just that's what years of watching this team will do to you. It's like, okay,
same
what spectacular way are the Knicks going to blow it? And then when they're losing, it's, well, how are they going to fake comeback? And
Yeah, no, I'm thinking back to earlier in the year when they had a 20-something point game, a 20-something point lead in a game, and I'm like, I got really mad at something that happened. And my wife looked at me. I think I may have told the story in the pod. My wife looked at me. She's like, "What's wrong with you? They're up by 20-something points." I'm like, "No, you don't get it. This game could turn. It could turn any second. It could turn." And she's like, just looking at me like I'm a crazy person, which obviously I am. But then a game like tonight, I'm like, when it was 18, I'm like, just get it to 20. Get it above 20. Put this team away. This team wants to go away and die. Give them a reason to do that. And they got it to 21, but then that fluky end of the third quarter and then beginning of the fourth, and it's just like, you had the feeling the whole time, like, man, they're going to figure out a way to make this a game down the stretch. And I guess, we could calm down for a sec. It's been a half hour since the game ended and I'm still wound up.
Keep in mind, by the way, the Pelicans. What? The Pelicans just came back from 24 points.
24,
today.
Yes, the biggest against the Celtics.
Right? Yeah. It's it's absolutely possible. It does.
No, it happens, but this is a bad team, the Timberwolves, and I think they made that very clear throughout this evening. They're not good, despite the fact that they almost came back, because that was on the Knicks, not on them. Although they did hit, what do they end up? 16 for 35 from 3, something like that, some crazy number. Here's the good news. The good news is we're sitting here and we are complaining vociferously about a Knicks win. And we're complaining vociferously about a Knicks win that got them to a record of 15-16 after 31 games, which means they're now 7.5 games away from equaling the preseason over-under prediction. And we've played, not yet half a season. So I guess is that the bright side? Is that the bright side, Jeremy? I think that's the bright side.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, also the fact that you're able to have games like this in the absence of Mitchell Robinson, because Nerlens Noel was great in the first half and really not great in the second half. And, it feels like Jekyll and Hyde, whereas with Mitch, he can have uneven games, but I don't think they're quite the roller coaster that Noel's tends to be. So it's hard to have stability, especially when I think it was the number one played lineup in the NBA is now 5-man lineup is now unable to perform. And he very much solidified the defense. Now, you could look at this performance, because Lord knows when it was the end of the third, I'm thinking like, well, this is going to look really nice when it comes to the defensive rating, because it's just going to be another notch in the bedpost. And it turns out like, well, it's
the bedpost.
Yeah, notch. Isn't that the expression? Just another notch in the bedpost.
Is that where one puts notches?
Yes. That's
I always pictured there being like a post in like the back, a random post in the backyard, and you just randomly put notches for the purpose specifically of.
You think everyone
notches.
has posts like just like stakes in
this
the
isn't
backyard?
Something anybody has done in like probably hundreds of years, but I just you could put notches in your. My mind went elsewhere.
It's a notch in the bedpost.
Okay, that's fine. If that's
I'm gonna go get a bedpost, and I'm gonna start. You have to notch it. Just every person around the world just buy a post. Anyways, yes. So Mitch, that's what we were talking about, right?
Yes, we were talking about Mitch. Yes.
So
it's a win. It's a notch somewhere on some post.
Right. Okay. Right. But it started to fall apart, of course, in the fourth, and it hurts when you don't really have a bench. I mean, shout out to Alec Burks. He certainly stepped up his game after a few very sluggish performances this last 4 games or so. So it was nice to see him bounce back, but it's unfortunately uneven. And when you don't have, I mean, I knew it was an off night the moment Emmanuel quickly missed a free throw. And then it kind of just like, right. I know the second one came later, but it was waiting for the third one because of the rule of 3, but it didn't happen. So I guess that was good, but yeah, it's just a really unfortunate performance. And also I guess it goes to show how good Julius Randle has been for this team. But also just how talented Karl Anthony Towns is, because as you're saying, the Timberwolves is just not a good team. Rubio, yes, he went off. He never seems to play well, except of course when he plays the Knicks. And you've got a lot of G League caliber guys and just like end of rotation players on the worst team in basketball. And they staged a comeback, and they're the worst coach team in the NBA as well. So, they did an admirable job, but it fell short. The thing is, if they had to play an extra 5 minutes based on the momentum, I'm not confident that the Knicks can hold on, but we don't have to worry about that because the Knicks did hold on in 48.
I think there was a point in time where I was hoping that they would get to overtime. I think it was they missed. Who had the miss with? It was a miss with just under a minute to go. That was the moment specifically where I'm like, they're actually going to blow this game. I think it might have been. It was either RJ or Randall, and whatever. They both missed some shots down the stretch. RJ missed a couple shots down the stretch. He made a couple shots down the stretch, but he missed some shots down the stretch. It was a uneven game for him. We'll talk about that in progress report in a little bit. But here's my takeaway from this week of Knicks, because I think coming into the Orlando game, which we have not talked since that Orlando game, right? There was a feeling, I think I wrote it in the newsletter. I'm like, okay, I am comfortable saying it. This team is good. We're here. I don't know where here is, but we're here. We have arrived at a destination that we have been waiting to get to for a goodly amount of time. And I felt like they had arrived there, and I allowed myself to believe that based on losses or based on wins in which they pulled away. What they didn't do tonight, by the way, they pulled away against undermanned bad teams, the Rockets, the Wizards without Bradley Beal. And before that they had beat the Hawks in what was a very good win. And I think the Orlando game and this game were a reminder that no, they're not there yet. They're not a bad team, because I don't think you could be 15-16 with a positive net rating, which they have, albeit barely. I don't think you could be a bad team with those numbers, but they are thoroughly mediocre. They could win on almost any night, and I think they could lose on any night. And I think the difference for them is that they have Julius Randle, and a lot of times the teams that they are playing do not have someone as good as Julius Randle, right? Isn't that basically what, if we were to write the story of this next season in 1 or 2 sentences, wouldn't that be it?
Yeah, I don't see how you can't start with him. It's just that it's, again, this constant theme of the Knicks tending to play down to teams that are bad or playing up against better competition. And that really helps you come playoff time, of course. But when you're doing better and you keep achieving higher heights, you can't play down to a team like the Wolves. You can't let them come back.
No,
when Hernan Gomez hit that 3 and then talked trash to the Knicks bench, I thought, like, all right, buddy, you're down by 15. And then you cut to, 20 minutes of 30 minutes of real life later, and it's like, oh, the Wolves have the lead. Great. So yeah, you can't look at it like that. They have to treat each team like a serious competitor, because if they don't, you're going to see performances. But you're right.
For 48 minutes, which Tibbs always goes back to in these post-game pressers. He's always like, we're still working on getting 48 minutes out of it. So
yeah, exactly. And, yes, the underman performances against those teams, that's obviously vital. And it's great that they blew the doors off when they knew they had to. And it's just so funny how this whole week, it's just such highs and lows, right? Because of the fact that the game I was forgetting was, of course, the Atlanta game, which I think was one of the best, if not maybe the best games of the year. I can't remember the last time that I was that amped up for a game this season. It just was a lot of fun. And they were persistent, even though they kept, and same thing with Atlanta. They treated them like a foe, but then they let go of the leash, and Atlanta came charging back. And then they took the lead, and it went back and forth, seesawed, and then finally they prevailed, which was great. But this idea of not being able to just look at a team like the Hawks, the fourth quarter was phenomenal. But if you didn't have some fantastic Nerlens Noel performances in that game, or if RJ Barrett's shooting a little bit colder, if Julius Randle's not as hot as he was, because let's face it, the Hawks came that close, and they had to defy what? Julius Randle had 43 points that night.
44. Yeah.
44. So, that is something that you have to consider, where you can't just let Julius bail you out of these games, because, and if anything, it shows that he's absolutely an all-star. Just look at the Knicks record. But even so, you need better contribution. And I don't know if that is possible this season. And if it's not, how are you going to do it next year? Because it will come eventually. It's just, I don't know how you achieve that, because a lot of guys have to kind of go above the mean. And then, of course, at some point they'll regress. You need legitimate, capable talent, and not just placeholders and guys who can fill in for a team that's just being headlined by Julius Randle, and to a lesser degree, but still RJ Barrett.
Well, let's do our progress report right now on RJ Barrett, because you just put him in the same sentence as Julius Randle.
Well, I did say to a lesser extent. I wouldn't, they're not in the same universe right here, but you see games that RJ will do. And, in terms of streakiness, that's the one thing I'd like RJ to work on. I'm sure we all would, is the fact that he gets very hot and then cools off dramatically, and then gets hot again, and then starts to get ice cold. And finding some sort of equilibrium would be beneficial, of course, but you then keep reminding yourself, okay, second season, still figuring things out, still a new coach this year. He's had 3 in his career. How's he going to get to figure this out? He's a hard worker. Hopefully something turns soon, but that'll take time.
So here's the thing with RJ. Just looking at tonight, right? He ended up taking 20 shots. He was 10 for 20. Julius Randle was 8 of 16. So they shot the exact same percentage. RJ took 4 more shots. Barrett got 21 points and Randle got 25. There was a point in the first half, because I looked at the box score at the point when this had happened. I think Barrett had taken 2 more shots than Randle. I want to say at the time he was 5 of 10 for 10 points. And I believe Randle had taken 8 shots and he had 17 points. Randle missed some shots in the second half. But I think there was this notion coming into the year, or maybe at one point in the beginning of the year, that there was this 1 and 1A scenario, or like an A and a B, but I think at this point where we have to face the reality that this is Julius Randle's team, and everybody else is just there, and there are different variations of a guy. And RJ, I think the conversation has to be, if we're being realistic about this team, which I don't even know if it's worth having this conversation, because it's not about this year. It's about beyond this, but building good habits and getting wins and all of the stuff that we talk about and we make a big deal about. Yes, that's all important. But really, we're projecting. So me coming on here and disparaging RJ Barrett by saying he's worlds away from Julius Randle is not useful. It's not going to make anybody happy. And it's quite frankly probably not a good use of any of our time. But I do think that it is important when we're talking about what is the next step to at least point it out, because you have Randall and then you're like, okay, there's the group of like RJ, quickly in some order. And then you want to throw Mitch in there, I guess. You want to throw Toppin on the periphery of that, I guess. But because I just think RJ has not earned. Here's my takeaway from a lot of what I saw tonight. And you tell me if this is unfair. RJ Barrett had the ball a lot tonight. Like, Tibbs gave him the ball and was like, here, go, make a play, make something happen. And a couple of times he made something happen. And a bunch of times he didn't. And Julius Randle, when you've given him the ball and you're like, make a play, he just makes it a lot more than RJ has this year, as he should. He's 26. RJ is 20. But in terms of like where this team is trying to go this year, I was just watching and I found myself getting frustrated because I'm like, I don't know that he's earned these possessions, even though they may be in furtherance of some greater goal. And I almost wished I could take back those possessions and replace them with something where there's more ball movement and maybe there's a kick out to an open 3-point shooter and there's not RJ going one on, whatever he's going on. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I know that was probably a bit muddled, but you get where I'm kind of going with this?
I do. I mean, as you pointed out, RJ's 20 and Randall is 26 years old. RJ's in his second year. Randall's finally coming into his own in the 7th year of his NBA career. And yeah, you want to see more ball movement. I mean, that was certainly a problem in the fourth quarter. There was too much ISO to the point where you just couldn't find open shooters. And, I think a lot of people probably are looking at the fact that the Knicks only took 18 threes and throwing their hands up in the air. The Wolves are actually, I want to say, the best team in the NBA in terms of limiting 3-point attempts. So clearly they defend the three very well in terms of avoiding teams to get shots off, which of course puts more pressure. But for a team that's already, not going to space the floor starting lineup wise anyway, that should kind of be their bread and butter in some ways. In terms of RJ, yeah, you want to see more ball movement. Absolutely. But it's the sort of thing of like, okay, well, who's he necessarily going to pass it to, right? Because if he's passing it in the starting lineup, he could pass it to Randall, who's already moving the ball and basically serving as your primary. You've got Reggie Bullock, who is going to catch and shoot or spot up. Not that much that he's going to do with creating.
It would be Bullock and Burks, right?
Right. But again, like, you have it down the stretch, maybe so. And Burks is able to hit a lot of shots. But RJ's not playing a lot of his minutes with Burks. He's playing his minutes with
you're right.
Elfrid Payton, who, how many times is RJ going to drive and kick out to Elf in the quarter and just bricking it? Far too much for my liking, for anyone's liking.
No, you're right.
Or
right.
Noel's not going to create for anyone. Maybe he'll have a DHO every now and then. But he's not the most gifted of passers either. So I think it's really hard to evaluate players when they're stuck playing with guys who can't do very much. Like with Mitchell Robinson, he's had an uneven season. I'd say he's taken steps forward, but he's not doing, at least in terms of, for example, field goal percentage, right? He's not finishing quite as well as he did last season. Well, what's a big reason why? Perhaps it's because he doesn't have a floor general who's able to feed him the ball. The Knicks are still ass in transition. He's great in transition, but if there's not someone who can be an engine, how can he finish? And so that's kind of how I look at it with RJ, where yes, he's 20. Yes, he has not had the opportunities yet to show whether or not he's able to convert continuously, but you have to start somewhere. It's the chicken or the egg. If you're not giving him the opportunities, then he's not getting them. And if he's not getting them, then, you're having issues with giving it to him.
It is giving him the ball and letting him try to get buckets is the proper next step for his evolution as a player, which is in furtherance of the Knicks' long-term goals, which is why I realize, as I'm saying, I'm coming on here and being like, I'm not comfortable with those possessions. That's stupid of me, because if you really care about this team winning a championship, again, acknowledge they're not winning a championship this year, and this is the year to get those reps in. I guess I don't know. We do this. We all are always thinking further down the road and down the line, and like, what are the other moves? And I really do feel like this team is coming up to a pivot point. Well, basically they go one of three directions, right? Let's just put it out there. They could stay the road. Is that the expression? Stay the road?
Stay the course.
Stay the course. Stay the course. Yes. So whatever course they're on, they could stay it or stay on it.
Stay on it.
Stay on it. Stay it. Whatever.
It's just another notch at that post.
They could make some kind of a win now move. Not trading away anything that matters, right? Not trading away RJ, not trading away obviously quickly or Mitch or who am I forgetting? Obi. That would be very stupid. But some kind of a win now move. Maybe they trade away a draft pick. Maybe they whatever. Or they could trade away Julius Randle for something and go in that direction. And I'm like 85%. I just want them to stay the course. But I do think they're coming up on an interesting point here. And I just wonder, I don't know. I wonder what they're thinking and what their preference is and how much games like what we saw this week are influencing their decision. Are they just watching these games and being like, all right, this is the team that we thought that we would be. You win some, you lose some. We have a better record than we thought we'd be. Let's just keep riding it out. This is great. Or are they looking at this and being like, man, if we just had one more guy, we would really be able to do some damage in a poor conference and, get into the playoffs and maybe put a scare into a team. And then who knows what happens in the offseason. Like or do they look at it and they're like, wow, we're really a ways away. Do we make a bigger so I think it's an interesting inflection point on the season. That's why I thought these games were interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say the one big thing is Randall's not going anywhere. There's no way that the Knicks would trade Julius Randle, at least this season, in my personal opinion, because the
you
message
sure about that
I am. I am very sure about that. I'm not saying he's untouchable. I'm just saying this season, sending him away would be, in my opinion, a really terrible idea. And I know it's a complete 180 from where we've been in the past, but you have someone who wants to be here desperately. And we've heard that before, of course. But the fact is that he is truly, and hopefully we'll find this out soon, but he is looking like an all-star. And yes. To go from like, hey, this guy who was just completely slandered last year, and rightfully so at times, absolutely. But what he went through last year and how he was misused and mismanaged, and now look at him and he's great and bye-bye.
And he's better too. He's admitted as much. This isn't all like Fizdale, Steve Mills' fault. Like Julius has gotten better. So we should just note that.
And it's the idea of, okay, well, what are you trading Randall for? Because in my opinion, you don't trade down. You upgrade. You don't downgrade. Like I don't see the advantage of trading for picks or young players that are like periphery guys, because what does that tell me? It just tells me we're just casting a wider net and hoping it hits. Now, listen, you've got someone who's like probably a top 30 player. We were talking about this in Strickland Slack. He's really a top 30 player who's playing like a top 20 guy. And if he can keep progressing, if he can have this season again or this type of season next year, then he's moving into the top 20. Because that's showing, okay, it's not just one random season where he's excelling. It's, okay, this seems to be who he is. And again, like we can talk about if he's a short-term or long-term guy, and I think that's an interesting conversation. But in the immediate short term, they do nothing positive by trading him, because I just don't see how that helps you. It really depends on the package. And if you also canvass the league, right? If you look at teams that could use a Julius Randle, I'm not saying this to be rude to Randall. It's just the reality is that there aren't that many teams. A lot of teams are set at the position that he's at, and which would mean, okay, we're trading for a 4, which, you could do, sure. But it doesn't make sense to me to do that. Or the other idea, and I've seen people bring this up to me before of, well, should you extend Julius after the season? And the answer to that, just very briefly, is no. You don't necessarily want to do that. They also can do that, though, right? They can, but it's like, look at the league. Look at where the salaries are trending and the payrolls. You can find an opportunity where, I'm not saying, go so hard where it's like he's earning nothing, because that's not going to happen. There's a certain threshold he's going to make, and it's just how much past that. But if you look at the teams that are going to be in that position to offer him, and if he's happy where he is in, the Nick Tucky arena, if he's comfortable with where he's at being the guy, then he's going to, want to stay here. Money obviously will sort itself out. But again, I don't see too many teams that will be in the position to say, hey, Julius, we're going to pay you a boatload of money. Just all you have to do is look at the future payrolls. But again, I think it would be reductive to do it. I'm not against trading Julius Randle long term. And just quickly to go back with the contract thing, you don't want to decline his option because then he's got $4 million guaranteed on your salary cap. So just pick up his option, let him play out the year.
That's off the table. That's off the listen.
Right. But I just wanted to phrase that. But in terms of directions on which to go, I still stand by the idea of both buying and selling. I think you can. It's not a huge sell. But games like tonight, I don't think matter to the team. I think that they're looking at the grand picture here, and they're looking 2 to 3 years down the line as well. And a couple, like a week like this with highs and lows isn't necessarily going to dictate how they feel about selling or buying. Because if it is, that, in my opinion, is a huge problem from a front office standpoint. Because if you're not able to think critically about the larger sample sizes, then you're really just kind of blowing in the wind. And what is your ultimate goal? Like, yeah, you could say we want to contend, we want to win a championship. But if you're doing nothing and you're just kind of going by individual games or week by week basis, that to me is extremely problematic. And I'm not to suggest that's what the Knicks are doing or even not,
I don't think they are.
They've been forward thinking enough where it leads me to believe that they're not going to look at small segments and say, okay, this is how we've been doing recently. We got to figure it out. And just lastly, we're going to get the second half of the NBA schedule. I'm really curious to how it looks because you could potentially argue that if they get a really easy schedule in the beginning, maybe that addresses something else. Maybe if they get a harder schedule in the beginning, then they decide to make upgrades. That sort of thing of how it plays in. But it's again, I don't think that's going to be the sole factor. I think it'll be one of many. But I'd like to see them do buying and selling, but nothing on a huge degree. But necessarily.
I do think what they're no team obviously should be making decisions based on the outcome of a couple of games, right? That's ridiculous. It's bad process, which we've always had here, and we don't want to have here anymore. That said, they now have 1, 2. I just realized they're going to play Detroit twice in 3 games because the game that was added is a Detroit game at the end. So they have now, here's what's left in their first half schedule. Home games against Golden State, Sacramento, and Indiana. They go to Detroit, who I believe did they play? I know there was a tweet that went out about Dennis Smith Jr. starting a game. Did that happen tonight?
It did.
Yeah? Did they? Oh, look at... By the way, welcome to the pod, our producer, Andrew Claudio, who's now going to be joining us occasionally, or maybe every Sunday live. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Do you know offhand what Dennis Smith Jr. did tonight for the Detroit Pistons?
So not only do I know, because I'm fascinated by everybody's obsession with how well Dennis Smith Jr. is going to do on the worst team in the NBA, but I can look it up for you because that's what a good producer does. In 15 minutes, Dennis Smith Jr. Went 2 for 6 with 6 points, and the Detroit Pistons lost by 9. Now, he did go 2 of 4 from 3, so their volume shooting from 3, that's technically a good stat line. I go back to they lost, so does it matter?
Okay. Thank you.
All I'm hearing is that Dennis Smith Jr. shot 50% from 3 this
right.
game, and the Knicks made the worst decision that they possibly could have because Derrick Rose had a bad game. So ipso facto, Knicks completely blew it.
Typical Knicks. And that second round pick is an asset, Jeremy. You don't trade assets for Derrick Rose.
That's true. That is true.
That's enough of this conversation. So Golden State, Sacramento, Indiana at home. Then they go to Detroit. Then they go to San Antonio, and then they come back home and finish against Detroit. So here's the thing: they're 15-16 right now. I absolutely think it will make a difference how this team approaches the second half of the season, because if they somehow figure out a way to go 5-1 over their next 6 games, which that's asking a lot, right? It's asking a lot to go and beat Golden State, who I know is struggling right now, but they're a good team. We'll see. I don't know. I assume Curry's going to play, even though we missed the Charlotte game. Indiana's a good team, even though they've kind of been scuffling. Sacramento already beat them this year. San Antonio, obviously, is a team that is not as good as their record indicates. Their net rating is not great. But like, look, it's 5-1 on the 5-1's on the table. Like, would it completely shock you if they went 5-1, despite what they showed us tonight? No, wouldn't completely shock me if they went 5-1 versus if they went 2-4. And as again we saw tonight, is this team capable of losing 2 of the next 6 games? Absolutely. And I do think if they went one or the other, I think it could affect how they play out the rest of the season. Should it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I feel very strongly one way or the other. But it's interesting to me that they're in this position because they really are, especially with the East. And here's the thing. The East is wide. After those first 3 teams, the East is wide open. It really, how crazy is that? Yeah. And you can even argue, depending on what you think of Milwaukee, I think Milwaukee's going to figure it out. But so I don't know. I think they're in a really interesting spot. That's all I want to say.
Can I make a point about the East?
Please.
So obviously, we've had a lot of scuttlebutt and discourse about Bradley Beal.
We have had some of the butt.
Yes. Fun fact, the Wizards, since the Knicks beat them, have won 4 games in a row. And Washington right now is 1.5 games away from being tied for the 10th seed. And for those who may need a reminder or did not hear, you just need to be in the 10th seed in your conference to get into a play-in game.
If you don't know, you got to ask somebody.
All it takes. So seeing as how today was the 10th anniversary of the Carmelo Anthony trade, again, like we can go back to the fact of the East is so competitive that why would the Wizards want to be sellers right now? Yes, you could say, well, they'll probably have to sell, so they might as well do not. Sure, but again, like if they want to be competitive and if they want to show Bradley Beal that they're trying to win, and if they, they do still have picks, right?
Yes, they will.
Exactly, because you don't just say, all right, well, the future's not bright, so we're going to get rid of Beal. Should they do that? Yeah, I think they absolutely should, but they've shown loyalty because Beal's also shown that he's being loyal. And then, you could talk about Levine, who is going off. Had some absurd games. And Chicago, they're currently the 9th seed. They are a mere 1 game back of the Knicks. Is Chicago going to decide, let's get rid of Zach LaVine? Or are they going to say, hey, like what we're doing in some ways, the Knicks should prioritize Julius Randle. The Bulls should prioritize Zach LaVine. We've seen talks of Lonzo Ball potentially going to Chicago. That indicates they want to make an upgrade, if that rumor is to be believed. So if all of these teams are kind of jockeying for position, then they're not necessarily going to want to rip the Band-Aid off and go through this monster rebuild. If those two teams don't want to do it, then where are you getting your big talent to help, help you upgrade significantly versus just staying the course?
You're not getting it anywhere. What you are getting is a seller's market.
Right. Which is why if you want to take a step back, then this is the perfect time to do it. Right? You create a market of complete ability to just say, you know what? We can this is why I want to buy and sell. You can stay the course, and you can also try to net some assets out of it using your cap space, using whatever you need and the talent you have on your roster. Like if another team needs an Austin Rivers, even though he's out of the rotation here, but for some reason they want him, you can just trade him for matching salary. Yes, I know it doesn't have to match, but they're going to try to keep it and work their way and work their magic. You can do that. You can still net assets and do all of these other things and stay the course. That's the beauty of it. Just by, saying, hey, we could use Alec Burks, but Alec Burks shows up maybe once every few games. And when he does, it's great. It's really great. The other games, not as much, but that's still a quality player and that's worth something. And if you can survive without that type of player, even for 30 games, and you would rather have the asset, okay. So
I don't know that the Knicks can. Here's the thing: unless you're getting someone to replace him, I don't know if the Knicks can survive without Alec Burks, which is a frightening thought.
Sure, but again, it's the idea of what would necessarily be coming back. Because if you made some sort of buying as well as selling Alec Burks, for example, then you're able to potentially replicate his contributions, or at least to a degree.
I don't think I'm going to disagree with you. I think if they make a move, they're going to make a move that counts. And I think it's interesting you brought up the Carmelo trade. It has been 10 years. That's a trade I don't know what, if you want to say anything on it. The only thing we texted earlier today, we're like, are we going to talk about the Carmelo trade? It's a trade you got to make, because of where they were at the time and of the caliber of player that Carmelo Anthony was. The Knicks are not where the Knicks were then, and there is no player of Carmelo Anthony's caliber that is available, I don't think, right?
There isn't. No.
Okay.
Just flat out, there isn't. Because that's the point. Beal, Levine, I do not view them as top 10 players. I think they're performing it.
I think Beal's in that conversation.
I do not. I really don't.
You don't think Bradley Beal's a top 10 player?
Again, who is he bouncing out? Because I see a team like the Blazers, and I see what Damian Lillard is able to do, carrying the Blazers on his back with no CJ McCollum or Yusuf Nurkic. And I see the Wizards, who, they've won 4 games in a row, but they were what, 6 and 17 beforehand?
Settle down for a sec.
It just seems like a lot of times it's blaming his supporting cast when I've looked at the advanced stats. They're really putrid for Beal.
I put him in my Julius Randle for All-Star.
I'm sure you did. Absolutely. Yes. I know you did, for a matter of fact. I read it. The idea, though, of Beal's teammates is just it's lazy to me because, obviously they're not great. But then when the team does well, is it, the teammates are suddenly good? Or is it, Bradley Beal is fantastic and he was just being held back before? It just, the narrative, it moves. It shifts back and forth, and so do the goalposts. That's my big thing with Bradley Beal. I think Carmelo Anthony, the way that he was able to keep Denver afloat in the West, and he had
a conference finalist, and they were a better team, but still.
Yes, absolutely. But, being able to do that, and also, sure, he had better talent around him, but he was able to lift up that team in a uber competitive conference and have them consecutive, 50 plus win seasons. Right. And then you look at someone like Bradley Beal, it's like, well, he just doesn't try on defense. I mean, for the last few seasons, he has been, according to Cleaning the Glass, somewhere in the 4th to 6th percentile in defense in a lot of categories. 4th to 6th, it's just abysmal. It really is. And, again, I do like Bradley Beal. I don't want to make it, whenever I come on this podcast and we talk about him, and in some ways I just want him to be traded or extended so we don't have to talk about it anymore, but we do, because of course, you have Stephen Bondi's article and that talks about CJ McCollum, and then people talking about World Wide West as if him recruiting players, is an issue, and that's literally his fucking job. I mean, that's the idea of what he's supposed to do. And is it tampering? It's only tampering if he gets caught. So just shut up about it in the meantime. Anyways. The point
I love how feisty you're getting.
No,
I haven't seen you this feisty in a while.
I can get feisty. I can do it.
It's great.
Here's the thing. There haven't been things for me to really feel like I need to be feisty about, which is a great reflection of where the Knicks are. Because if I feel like there's something that they have done horribly wrong, I'll bash them for it. But that has yet to happen. So my feistiness now goes to the Bradley Beal conversation, which, again, it's just, you can try to make the argument for a top 10 player.
I just want to name. Can we just go through a couple guys?
Sure.
Okay, I think you're right, but Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, Jimmy
Stephen
Butler.
Curry.
Hold on, I'm going down the East. Jimmy Butler.
Okay.
Jimmy Butler's better than Bradley Beal, right?
See, I said this, and I had some people say he wasn't, and I look at what Jimmy Butler was able to do with the Bulls, with the Timberwolves, and the fact that this Timberwolves team that we saw has been asked for every year since 2003, and the one year they did well was because Jimmy Butler brought his teammates up and absolutely carried them. He carried them. We have not seen Bradley Beal carry a team like that. He had John Wall, who was playing like an all NBA player for a few years, multiple years. And John Wall was leading the team, and Bradley Beal was doing a great job as his second banana. And then Wall goes down. And then it's like, what? Okay, well, this is the time where Beal steps up. This is when you go out and do something. And he hasn't. And then you look at Jimmy Butler going to Miami. We see this Miami team. Sure, you can talk about COVID if you want, but they do not look like a good team.
No, he's not Jimmy Butler.
And you look at what they were able to do in the bubble and the fact that he was able to carry that team. And the Wizards, I mean, yes, Beal wasn't there. Obviously, that is an issue. I think they went, 1-7. That I understand.
Did they win a game?
They did. I think they won one game.
Okay.
And I get that. It's a very different situation, but that's why I think Jimmy
Butler is better than him. I'm going to skip over the Jazz guys because I don't want to get into a Jazz conversation. LeBron is 7, AD is 8, Kawhi is 9. We don't need to talk about Paul George. I'd rather have Devin Booker today, and I'd rather have Devin Booker next year, and I'd rather have Devin Booker the year after that. So that's 10. I think that's 10. So that's the end of the conversation. Plus Dame, Jokic, Steph, Luka.
Right.
Yeah, that's the conversation. That's it. Okay, so he's he's a top 15 player ish.
I think he's a borderline top 15 guy.
Yeah.
He's a prolific scorer, fantastic scorer.
And Randall, as you said, is a top 30 guy playing like a top 20 guy.
Yeah.
Top 20, top 25. Okay. All right. Well, they're not going to go get Bradley Beal. That's not going to happen. They're not trading for Bradley Beal. I don't think they're going to make the type of margin move that you think they are going to be open to. Cause I don't know. If a team has, sorry, we're going to say,
no, I think they'll make margin moves. I think that they will also look into bigger moves. It's just a question of who of the names that we can think of that would make logical sense come aboard, because we could canvas the entire league.
Lonzo's the only, but we've been on the Oladipo train. I'm off that train. I don't think they're going to pay the price. I don't think they want him. I think he's been bad. There's a lot of reasons I don't think they want to get involved in the Oladipo sweepstakes. Levine's not becoming available. Beal's not becoming available. I don't think they want Eric Bledsoe. I heard his name was discussed, but I don't think they want him. Lonzo's the name. I think Lonzo's the guy.
But
if they go and get someone, which I don't know.
Right, but what are you really giving up in that standpoint? Because I mean, Lonzo's not a star. He's far from it. He's performing well, especially recently. He's been upping his averages across the board. He's definitely picked up his play after struggling in the beginning.
The 3-point shooting is this is now 2 years of a sample size that we have, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's
Andrew is nodding his head.
No, I mean it is. I'm just trying to think of the fact that yes, he's been able to work with Vincent, who is maybe one of the best shooting and developing coaches in the NBA.
Well, JJ Redick talked about him with Julius Randle on the pod this weekend. Let's assume the 3-point shooting is real, and he's not a half court playmaker like his brother, but he can still he could run a team, and I think he could materially elevate a team. And I just wonder if you're the Pelicans, and you don't want to pay whatever his asking price is. But that's where the Ball thing falls off for me, because Lonzo Ball making $12 to $14 million a year is a lot more interesting to me than Lonzo Ball making $18 to $20 million a year. And I don't know that anybody in the league is going to pay him $18 to $20 million a year, but with restricted free agency, it only takes one. So, yeah,
right. But then there are other suitors as well, and then.
But that's my point. It only takes one.
The Bulls are that interested. They could put forth a bigger offer because they have a ton of cap space too.
Well, they don't have any extra picks though.
I mean, you make it work if that's what you really want. They have, as you said, they have probably better players that they've used with their picks more recently that are able to be traded. A Lauri Markkanen, you could do some sort of 3-team deal involving.
Why the fuck would you want Lauri Markkanen if you're?
But I'm just saying, I'm using your words against. Well, I guess sort of.
I'm not saying this towards you. I'm just thinking out loud. If you're New Orleans, why the fuck would you want Lauri Markkanen? You don't, right?
You absolutely don't. You don't. But you can find some sort of third team maybe. But this is also, we talk about shooters and who can slide into the 2-guard position. Again, I see a lot of conversations around Gary Trent Jr. And the first thought that comes to my mind is, so you're telling me that Neil Olshey, who is the general manager of the Blazers,
who was Olshey?
Sure. Tomato. Olshey. You're probably right. He was even on Portlandia and they had him there, and that was fun.
I never watched that show.
It's a great show. Really funny.
Missed that? Okay.
But they had Olshey. The fact that Portland doesn't matter.
Shit.
Oh, wow.
It's not Knicks news, but I guess.
Well, it kind of is. The Knicks were responsible for this.
Or were they really?
I think they were.
Adrian Wojnarowski. The Minnesota Timberwolves have dismissed coach Ryan Saunders. How about that?
You know why the Knicks were responsible? Because you can't fire a coach after a gutsy win when you come back from double digits.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the double digit gutsy part, but they fired Tibbs, I believe, after back-to-back wins.
Then I stand corrected.
But I don't know if it was like
no. You're probably right.
I know they had like a big win against. Anyway, neither here nor there. And then he had a follow-up tweet. The Timberwolves will not immediately name an interim head coach tonight, sources said. Minnesota has dropped 24 of 31 games to start the season, leaving them with the worst record in the NBA. Yes, they have. Yeah. Well, ain't that something?
Yeah.
First coach fired. I did not have. Who did you have in your pool? I had. If we actually did a pool, I would have had Lloyd Pierce in mine.
Yes. Yeah, and especially because they had just hired Nate McMillan, which is like the perfect. Oh, hey, let's have this guy stab him in the back and hire him. But just really quickly about Gary Trent Jr. If Neil Olshey is going to pay Myers Leonard, Evan Turner, and Alan Crabb in the same offseason, even with the jump in the salary cap that existed that year, you don't think he's going to keep Gary Trent Jr.? You think he's just going to be like, oh, wow, a team bid $20 million. I'm going to let him go. No, that's not his style. You're going to retain your talent. If anything, you're probably going to say, well, like, how can we make an upgrade and look at a CJ McCollum? But you're not going to trade CJ McCollum to a team with cap space. You're going to want to trade him, at least not in a 2-team deal. You're going to want.
I'm going to send us off the rails to finish this pod because why not? We're going to lose sight of the train tracks. McCollum. Knicks are monitoring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Monitoring. The Blazers don't tank. The Blazers don't rebuild. The Blazers perpetually go for it, right? They're not taking a step back. You could argue that the Gary Trent Jr. Dame Lillard backcourt works better than the CJ McCollum Dame Lillard backcourt. Maybe not from a talent perspective, but from a money perspective, because I figure Trent's going to warrant something around $15 million next year. Starting next year, it's half as much as McCollum makes, and McCollum's contract goes up considerably. He'll be making 37 in 3 years, which is a lot of money. Anyway, if they were to put McCollum on the table and they called up the Knicks and they're like, hey, you guys got an all-star who would fit in really well with us because right now we're starting Derrick Jones Jr. at power forward, and that's not going to fly in the playoffs. Randall on that team is really interesting. Right? Dame, Gary Trent Jr., Randall, assuming a healthy Nurkic, and Covington. That's a 5 with Melo off the bench, the whole thing. So if you're Leon Rose, you're like, okay, so you're going to give me CJ McCollum and what else, right?
Sure.
Do you hang up the phone when it's like when they ask for Randall and the return is CJ McCollum plus, or do you want to hear what the plus is?
Well, I mean, again, here's the thing though. I don't know how much more you can give if you're the Blazers, because with CJ, he's an older player. He's going to be
30. He's 29.
But he's locked under contract.
3 more years after this one.
Right. Whereas Randall has 1 year left. And you could kind of think of it like,
oh shit, did he sign that extension? Isn't there a rule you can't trade someone in the first year after they sign an extension?
Yeah, but he signed a 4-year deal, I think, before.
He signed a 4-year deal, but then he tacked 3 years onto it at some point, which I will. We have a producer on here. Can you look up when CJ McCollum signed his extension? Andrew, thank you so much. Well,
if we're talking about I guess it would have to be at the deadline. But I don't know. I look at the CJ McCollum contract as like a potential for a Kevin Love type deal, where like it's a really good offensive player, and just as time goes on, he's not really worth it. I don't know
if you're giving CJ enough credit.
No, I don't mean to disparage him. Right?
You're not
he's a really good player.
Yeah,
he's a really good player. I just don't see the fit necessarily. Like, I don't know why you would trade a 27-year-old for a 30-year-old who's on a similar caliber. Who, I mean, the West is loaded, whatever, but just want to point out he's never been an all-star.
CBS, but he was, if he didn't get hurt this year,
damn good player. Yes.
I think everybody was in agreement that he was going to make the all-star team if he did not get hurt this year. That is the caliber of season he's
in. No, he was really picking it up. But again, you have to consider, what timeline are you working on, right? Because now you're working on CJ McCollum's timeline.
Are you just trying to win games and you're like, is this guy going to be productive throughout the length of his contract? And if the answer is yes, you worry about the rest later. Let me put basically what I'm hearing is you're not even worrying about what the plus is.
Well, no, I mean, let me pose this.
Sure.
How are you replacing Julius Randle? Who are you starting at the 4 next year?
I think they just drafted a guy. What's his name?
But again, just because he's drafted doesn't mean that he's going to be the starter. What about Obi Toppin has made you feel confident that he can slide in as a starting 4?
I don't know, because I've only seen him play for 12 minutes a game.
But that's a huge leap of faith. You're again. I go back to the idea that Julius Randle's not going to get traded this season. But putting Obi Toppin in,
I'm not saying he is, but just from a theoretical perspective, if you are taking Randle out and you're putting Toppin in, and you're putting CJ McCollum in, and you're taking Reggie Bullock out, then you're running your offense through CJ McCollum as opposed to Julius Randle, and you're essentially replacing Reggie Bullock's talents with Obi Toppin's talents, which this year may be a bit of a watch. Theoretically, starting next year may be a different story once Obi Toppin learns the game and he's not a rookie. Look, I'm just saying I'd want to hear what the plus is. Well, that's all I'm saying.
Again, you always want to hear, but if CJ McCollum is playing or was playing as well as you're saying he was, and he was playing very well.
He's averaging 27 points a game on really efficient.
But then why is there a plus on Portland's side? Why would they be willing to give up more for CJ McCollum?
Because they have Gary Trent Jr.
Okay, but then
they have 3 guys for 2 spots.
That's fine, but then why are you giving up more for Julius Randle when you can still canvass the league for other players that won't be as expensive?
Because
if you solidify your backcourt.
Because you're Portland and you go for it every year.
But you can
and Julius Randle is the best available player for you. He's the only player worth trading CJ McCollum for you.
You're telling me that in the offseason, if Portland went to Atlanta and said, we want to work out some sort of trade that involves John Collins.
Fuck John Collins. John Collins sucks. Julius Randle's Julius Randle.
Okay, great. But that doesn't mean that he's going. There's no reason for the Knicks to trade for CJ McCollum, though. That's my point.
I'm asking about it's the plus. I'm not trading Julius Randle straight up for CJ McCollum. I'm just wondering if you're trading Julius Randle, right, for CJ McCollum, and let's just say, for argument's sake, let's go nuts. Let's say you're getting Anthony Simons back.
So they're trading McCollum and Simons for Julius Randle?
Damn skippy they are.
Sure, but again, like, they're not. This to me, I don't understand. That? Yes, yes, I do.
I don't think you're giving Julius Randle enough credit. I don't think they're going to make that trade. Player. But I would add, that's what I would ask for if I was the Knicks.
You ask for anything. I mean, you could say, hey, we want Devin Booker for Kristaps Porzingis. You could ask for it, go for it. But again, like, from Portland's perspective, they diversify their team.
You're laughing now.
Obviously they have a better front court, no doubt. But again, it doesn't.
McCollum
really
could be traded. He signed the extension before last.
Right? Yes.
Okay.
So,
Chris Finch, by the way, is becoming the new head coach on a full-time basis. Chris Finch. His name has been. He's a hot name.
Yes.
Yeah, Chris Finch. Okay. I know Chewin likes Chris Finch, I think. Okay. And he's still with Toronto. Oh my God, he wasn't even on their staff.
He was with Denver, I think, and then moved to Toronto.
Yeah, well, according to
was he with New Orleans? One of the two.
Whatever. Anyway, look, we could argue about this until we're blue in the face. We're not going to, because we've already been podcasting long enough. It's a Sunday night. You're exhausted. I'm exhausted. It was a long game, but I'm mostly being facetious by going back and forth with you on this. I just think the Knicks are in a really interesting spot where they don't have the luxury to be like, we're not considering that. That's crazy. I just don't think they're in that position. And I think this is the point in time when really great GMs and front office execs, or whatever you want to say, will take what they have and be like, oh shit, we have something going here. Let's think outside the box as far as what we could do. And maybe again, for the reasons you said, CJ McCollum is an undersized 2 making $100 million over the next 3 years. That's not exactly what you want, but he's also a really damn good player. So I hope they're at least thinking outside the box. I'm not saying I would do that or any other deal for Julius Randle right now at the deadline, but I don't know. I hope they're keeping an open mind. And that goes two ways. That goes with, considering like, what will it take to get Lonzo Ball here or whoever else, because they're in an interesting spot, and you never know what could happen if you're like, let's make a run, get that 4 or 5 seed, the place that every fan is like, hates to be. But sometimes crazy shit could happen when you get good and respectable. And, oh, by the way, you're in New York City. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
Yeah. Listen, I do get it. I'm just saying I don't think that the right buying move is necessarily going after someone who is older than most of the Knicks currently are. That to me just isn't the right move. You can find someone who's younger. You can integrate them into your core, and you can say, this is the blooming core that we have. And I'm not saying they have to be, 20, 21 years old necessarily, but guys who are, at some point towards the end of their first contract, the beginning of their second contract. And I acknowledge that's hard, right? There's a reason why there haven't been that many trades of a player like Kristaps Porzingis. It's because teams like to keep their talent in-house. And that's the factor. That's the simple truth to it. But if you can figure out a way to bring in talent that's like, even if it's closer to Randall's age, and I get it, you could say, well, that is Bradley Beal. But again, you're not paying what it would take for his value. You're overpaying to get a player who you get to then say to the Wizards, like, hey, we're paying you to completely rebuild your team, because that's what it is. It's not just, hey, we want to trade Bradley Beal. It's, we are trading Bradley Beal, and holy shit, we now have to go into a huge rebuild where we've got Russell Westbrook on our books for 3 more years. We've got Davis Bertans on our books for another 4.5. It's a lot going on, and it's a huge organizational change. It's something that also you get a lot of front offices completely fired for. And that's why it has to be a prudent decision. And so, yeah, I'm in favor of buying, as I've said. It to me, it can't be a CJ type deal. It can't be where you're looking at great talent or really good talent that is closer towards the end of its prime than it is towards the beginning of it or the middle of it.
Here's the only thing I'll say is I'm less worried about timelines, and I'm more worried about, is it a good deal? Is it a smart deal? Because
if it's a steal, then I get it.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
But
they have the luxury with how they've started this season, new president, new coach, young roster. They do not have to act desperate. They should not act desperate. They cannot act desperate. They have to act from, how often can you say this about the Knicks in years past, but you could say it now. They can act from a position of strength, not necessarily strength in terms of assets. They have some good ones, not great ones, good ones, but they can act, and they should act from a position of strength. And it needs to be a deal that will blow them away for them to make it. I'm just saying, keep your ears open for if someone is going to call you with that deal. And I think Julius Randle is playing well enough that someone can call you and just absolutely blow you away with something that is almost unfathomably crazy.
Yeah.
Don't know what that's going to be.
Always listen. Take
That's
the
it.
call. I agree.
Just listen. And I say this as someone who right now sitting here today, I'd probably pay that dude a max contract.
Julius Randle?
Yeah, I probably would. I think he's been that good. I think he's earned something close to it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have that conversation another time, because
we will have that conversation.
I'm on a different wavelength. I think he's worth it. I think he's worth a lot of money. I can't commit to a max, but we'll go more.
I don't know what a max actually. I probably should. Max is like starts at 33, 34.
Yeah, but again, I mean, Let's talk about it later. It's a fun.
Well, this is going to be an ongoing conversation because what do you think this guy's going to get if he keeps this up?
Should I say it now or should I wait for another time?
We'll save it for another time.
All
okay,
right.
Jeremy, anything
say
for
now?
you?
All right. You're saying say now. All right. Again, I think if you're looking close to like $26 million, because again, and I'll do this for the next pod. Look at the teams that are out there. Look at what's going to be available, even if it's a year ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why someone's going to give him more than that.
Again, what team is going to do that, John?
Look at what's going to be out. You just said it. 2022. What's going to be out there on the free agent market?
Right.
Nothing.
But look at the team's payrolls that are already subject to happen. Look at who they have to pay.
Come on. Teams could move money if they
sure, I know. That's why I'm saying a guy
decides he wants to go somewhere.
I get that, but I'm saying look at how salaries are shaping up and look at the teams that are projected to have the max cap space that you're saying he's worth. How many of them are really out there?
I'm just if he keeps this up. Then it's a different conversation because then if you don't think he's worth one team making him this caliber of offer, then you should absolutely trade him before this deadline.
Then it's not necessarily that. It's why are you letting yourself why are you committing to a max contract for a player when you can have him test the market? Why would you lock him into the ceiling deal that you have when you can test the market? And what's the worst case scenario?
I'm just saying you're going to wind up
that.
I'm just saying you're going to wind up paying him that much.
You're not going to pay him a max contract.
So, which is your way of saying you don't think any team's going to offer him a max.
No, I don't. I don't think
so then I imagined this offseason when the Charlotte Hornets paid Gordon Hayward $30 million a year.
It's a little different.
Is it?
Yes.
How?
Gordon Hayward helped the Jazz at this point get further than they were in a worse conference.
He hadn't been on the Jazz in 4 years, 3 years, whatever it was.
And then the Celtics gave him the bag. But here's the other thing, John. There was a bidding war. There was a bidding war against him, and then the Knicks walked.
And you don't think there's going to be a bidding war?
What teams are getting into the bidding war that are expect to have cap space?
Oh my God! It's a year and a half away. You don't think
you can still see what teams have cap space on the books, or will have their payrolls. I understand that,
and what I'm telling you is Charlotte Hornets were not one of those teams that had cap space this summer. They had to waive and stretch Nick Batum in a move that was ridiculous.
Of course you can create cap space, but the Hornets also went after Hayward before. Where is he going to go that a team has wanted him before? And he was like, no, I don't want to go there right now. Because here's the thing. He signed an offer sheet to go to Charlotte.
Yes, I understand that. If you don't think that there is a team out there that would move stuff to be able to
Julius Randle.
Okay, forget.
I'm not saying he's not worth a lot of money. As I said, I think he's worth 25, 26. You could even, go a little bit higher if you really wanted to.
And some team out there,
point, it's not going to be the max. That's all.
And some team out there will say, all right, we have his value at $26.5 million. We can get him for 33.5. Well, I don't know. It's going to be paying him $7 million a year more than he's worth. You don't think some team would do that? Come on.
I'm saying if
Steve
you look
Mills
ahead,
paid fucking Tim Hardaway Jr. 3 times more than he was worth to get him in the building. I know Steve Mills doesn't have a job anymore.
A little different.
But the point
how many people are dumb enough to do that in this league? I don't think. Yes, it only takes one. But again,
it only takes one. That's my point.
But what of those teams is going to want to create all this cap space for Julius Randle? And again, if Julius Randle commands a max contract, all you have to do is match that. Just say, all right, you got that offer. We'll pay you that.
That's the only thing I'm saying. I think you will have to match
don't commit
it.
To it.
Someone's going to offer it to him because if he's doing this, if he's hitting 40% of his threes a year from now with the rest of these peripheral numbers and putting up buckets like he is, some team's going to offer it to him. And you're going to have to match it, which is, again, I'm just saying, I think he's worth it. That's my point. I think he's worth the money. I think he's been that good.
He's been great. But again, you don't necessarily have to commit to him right now.
You don't necessarily have to.
If you feel like he's going to get, some huge contract, and if you want to keep him, and if you want to extend him, then you can do that, right? If you really wanted to, if you absolutely wanted to let him not hit the market. I mean, again, the worst thing to do is non-guarantee his contract, then re-sign him because he has a partial guarantee. So you're still committing to like $4 million in dead salary on top of what you would pay him. That would be dumb. But if you want to extend him while he's there because everyone's happy, things are going well, that's great. We think we can lock into him and we can just avoid having the market whatsoever. I get it. That makes sense too. I just don't see him getting a max contract.
I think that if they have the opportunity, if they don't trade him at this deadline, which I agree with you, I don't think they will do. I think they should absolutely extend him because again, if unless it's for the maximum amount that they could extend it for, because then it doesn't make any sense. At that point, I agree with you. Let him go into unrestricted free agency, find that team who's going to give him the max, and then you just figure it out then. But if he's willing to extend this summer for something like 3 years and $90 million, I'd do that in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
To commit to paying Julius Randle $110 million over the next 4 seasons, of course I'm doing that. For his age 27, 28.
Including that last time.
What?
No. I see what you're saying. Yes, I didn't.
You're paying for his age 27 through 30 seasons, and you're paying him an average of $27.5 million a year in a league where you don't need me to go through the names of guys who are making close to that much money. Kevin Love's making more than that much. Andre Drummond makes more than that much.
But then you could say, is that a smart business decision if those are the guys that are making that much money?
Based on how he's played? Yeah, I think it's a bit of a risk if you're Randall because if you're Randall, you're locking it. I think if you're Randall, you're locking in the money now as opposed to testing the market and potentially getting more money and an additional year from another team on the open market, or maybe getting a 5-year max from the Knicks a year from now. So I think you're sacrificing a little bit. I think they'd probably ask him to take a little bit more off the top, maybe, $95 million or no, sorry, not 95, $85 million. But somewhere in that 85 to 90 range, like you're not going to extend him for less than that. There's zero chance that he's taking less than that.
But isn't that like $27 million? Which is what I said.
He is a player that is playing like a $27 million a year player right now.
Oh, all right. But now we're moving the goalposts, right? Because I said it's not a max. I said like 25, 26, maybe 27.
Okay, Isola, you're moving the goalposts.
I'm just saying those are the words that I said. If you want to use them against me, make them accurate. That's all. That's it. I'm not saying he's not worth paying more for.
I hope they're having these very conversations in their front office fucking tonight. I really do. That's what I hope. That's all I hope. That's all I want as a Knicks fan. All right. I think I started 10 minutes ago. I was like, anything else from you, Jeremy? And now I got this. So I won't ask that anymore. So you don't get to
now
say
you got this. You got a good conversation, a spirited conversation on Julius Randle before you overpay him as any team, gets the opportunity because of what if, right? Because of what if.
Andrew, you happy you joined for this episode?
It is very much my fault that you guys kept going because you guys were like, oh, we'll just tease it for next time. And I'm like, no, don't do that to your listeners. No. It's just very mean to do that.
This is your fault.
I know we're wrapping up. Can I just ask Jeremy one question?
Sure.
Would you pay Julius Randle's, like going into this offseason, say he was a free agent, would you have offered the same contract that Gordon Hayward got?
Of 4 years and $30 million or 30 per year?
Yeah, like 4 for 120.
4 for 120.
Now, granted, we're basing this off of what he did last year. Say what he's doing this year was last season, and he entered free agency off of this season.
I mean, wasn't the whole issue with Gordon Hayward about the money, not the years? That he went too far in terms of the years?
Right. So that's what I'm asking you personally, not the Knicks. Do you think he would have been worth 4 years, 120?
No, I don't.
Okay. So it's literally like $3 million a year is the bar.
I think
for
that's
you.
fair because there were a lot of I felt like the limit for Van Vliet was always 4 for 100. I felt like that was the consensus. Like anything above that, it's getting a little silly. And I think for as much as Randle is playing at a level right now that is a hair above where Van Vliet is playing right now, even though I think Van Vliet's been very good this year. The position that they play maybe makes a little bit of a difference. Although even that sentiment, I think maybe undersells Julius Randle's ceiling, undersells his effectiveness, undersells a lot of things about him. So, but what it's a conversation.
Sure, but I think it's a conversation.
That's all.
We started free agency where you tweeted how would Knicks fans feel about 3 years, $70 million for Gordon Hayward, right?
Yes.
That was the starting point. That's operating. And we went from 370 to 120, which means that in the span of about 24 hours, less than that, from when you initially reported that to what came out later and what subsequently was the deal, it went up that much. I think, yes, that is an example of how extreme it can get. But if you're already starting all the way up there, then you've lost your leverage. You've lost your negotiating powers. If you start lower, you can always work your way up. And it's like, well, it's like arbitration in baseball. You find a point in the middle that works out for you, but you start low. You don't start at the point you expect to compromise in, because then that's only going to push up the player's salary even more. So you have to start lower. You meet in the middle, or you get to at some point that is agreeable on both sides, and you work on it.
I just think it is, again, this will be a conversation we'll have at some point later, but we need to start being honest about, and we'll do what you wanted to do tonight. We'll go and look at the teams who have cap space in 2022, and we'll look and see what they have on their roster and the whole thing. That's an episode. Great. We'll do it. But we need to start talking about and being honest about what this guy's going to get paid at whether it's this season by the Knicks or the following offseason, whatever it is. Because this guy, I mean, he's been that good. So, all right. On that note, I'm going to go, what's it, 11:30? Okay, it's a good time to go write a newsletter. Thank you, everybody.
John.
What?
We do have one more thing to do.
We do?
Yes.
Oh, our record. We have to predict it. Okay, let's bang this one out. Who won last week?
Technically, you did, based on the fact that there wasn't a fourth game.
What bullshit is this?
No, because there wasn't a Spurs game.
That's right. So
what bullshit is this? I'm saying that you won on a technicality, but it's a win's a win.
I'm done.
And we also have to do the 10 left, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes. Whatever games are left. So
we have to. Okay. So since I won fair and square, no technicalities, I will first pick the week. So the week will go Tuesday home Golden State, Thursday home Sacramento, Saturday home Indiana, and we got to pick Sunday, I guess, right? Just hope my wife can hold off until then. At Detroit, I am going to take. I'm going to take 2-2.
2-2. All right. I'm going to say, oh man, this is tough.
You gotta go 3-1. You're not going 1-3.
That's true. I can't go 1-3.
No.
All right, I'll go 3-1. Sure.
Okay. So then to finish out the first half of the season, we're tacking on San Antonio and Detroit at home. So who goes?
I do.
Okay.
So I said 5-5 for the last 10. So I'm glad you're keeping
track of this shit.
I'm going to go with, I'm going to say 3-3.
Shit.
I know it's different from what I just said, which is 3-1. So I guess I'm really hoping that the Knicks go 3-1 and then lose to the Spurs at home against the Pistons. But
I'm going to go. Wait, how many games have they played right now? They've played games? 31, right?
Yeah. The Clippers game is what screwed us over.
No, it's 36 the first half of the season.
No, it's 37 now.
But they canceled the. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Andrew,
I'm so confused. Well, so they're going to wind up playing 37 games the first half of the season.
Yeah. Which they were always originally supposed to do. They took out the Spurs game. They added a Pistons game.
Man, I was under the impression the whole time that they were playing 36 games the first half of the season. It's 37, and it's a 72 game season or 74 games.
72, so they'll play 35.
So in my mind, they were just splitting it in half, but they were never splitting it in half.
Mm-mm.
Well, that's messed up. I'll go 4-2.
All right.
Now we're done. We're done?
I'm going to plug one thing.
Please.
For Pod Strickland. I'm going to be doing a bi-weekly, I guess bi-weekly is once every 2 weeks, or is it twice a week? I can never remember. Whatever. Once every 2 weeks. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Yes. So I'm going to be doing once every 2 weeks a podcast with Schwinny Poo. We're going to be doing a mailbag for Pod Strickland. He doesn't know this yet, but I'm unofficially calling it the Coschwincidence. All right. Seeing both of your reactions, one was an eye roll, one was like, oh, so it's a work in progress, but I'm proud of it. So we're going to work with that. Anyways, so listen to that.
On that note,
the shades.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Thank you, Jeremy, for just giving me agita.
You don't need that right now, do you?
I really don't need that right now. Don't need it right now. You know what I did today? I spent the entire first half of the day cleaning my house for anticipation of a baby. Do you know how much fun that is? Washing baby clothes and special baby detergent and cleaning moldings with special baby like Clorox wipes. Looking at them, they're right there. It's not fun. It's not what you want. But I did it, and that's rate and review. Yes. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to Andrew for producing this podcast. And also thank you to Andrew for reminding me to remind you, if you like this podcast, please go on your podcast rating, wherever you go rate your podcast, and give us a nice rating and write something down, kind, and 5 stars. 5 stars is the most stars you could get. And I think that's what we would like if you were so inclined to give it to us. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back with you with another episode very soon. And enjoy the week.